Hi, I'm Jessica Taylor from inkitupwithjessica.com, and today I'm going to give you some tips for heat embossing while showing you how to make this beautiful cake card. Did you know there are actually two kinds of embossing? There's heat embossing, where you make a raised image using embossing powder and a heat tool. And there's also dry embossing, and that's what I did on the background of this card. Back in the day, we did dry embossing with a stylus and a brass template or stencil, and you use the stylus to kind of push your paper into the template to make your raised image. Now it's super easy with embossing folders. When I am embossing, I like to put a piece of paper down, scratch paper. I'm using grid paper to kind of clean up my mess. I use the embossing buddy over my cardstock first, and that's because it will take away the static so that you don't get embossing powder sticking where you don't want it. I also keep my embossing powders in a Ziploc container. This just helps me keep my surface a little cleaner. It's easier to kind of scoop it out with a spoon, and then I don't get it all over my work surface, and I can just funnel it all back into my container. So I have a piece of cardstock here. This is Seaside Spray. I'm just gonna rub my embossing buddy over top of this to get rid of any extra static so my powder doesn't stick where I don't want it. I'm going to use a cake stamp along with the Versamark ink pad. This Versamark pad is a watermark ink, so if you stamp it on your cardstock, it's going to look just a little bit darker than the color of your cardstock, so you don't have to emboss it, but it also stays sticky long enough that you can stamp it and then put your powder on. I'm actually going to use my framelit here to make sure that I stamp my cake on in a way that's gonna help me get the most out of my cardstock. So I just wanna make sure that I get a really good image with that. And then once I've stamped it with Versamark, I'm gonna hold this over my embossing powder container and just spoon the embossing powder over top. Then I give it a little tap on the side, and if there's still extra, I might give it a little flick. If you don't have enough powder on at this point, go ahead and spoon some more over and do that again. Put the top back on so we don't make a mess. Then I'm going to take my heat tool and turn it on. You want to hold your heat tool at an angle so that the hot air doesn't bounce back off into from the cardstock back into it and break your heat tool. But you also want to move it around a little bit so that all of your powder is melting and you're not burning one section of your cardstock. So just move your heat tool around until all that powder is melted and your image is now raised and shiny. If your cardstock starts to kind of bubble up and crinkle, just heat it from the back and that will help flatten it out. And there is your embossed image. I've cut my cake out with a scalloped rectangle die, and then I'm gonna work on the background of my card. This is just a 4" by 5¼ piece of Seaside Spray cardstock. I'm using the same exact color, and I want to emboss that with my embossing folder so that it's kind of raised and textured. So this one has words that I want to make sure this is the top of the card, so I'm actually going to position my cardstock this way. And the Stampin' Up! Embossing folders have this line here that's great for lining up the edge of your cardstock. This is a 3D embossing folder, so if you're using a Big Shot, the sandwich that you want to make is the Big Shot platform, and then your embossing folder, and then the blue 3D embossing plate. Then you'll just run this through your Big Shot to do the embossing. Super easy. And there is the background for our card. Now all we need to do is put our pieces together. I've got a card base that is Whisper White cardstock, 5½ by 8½ You can fold it in half or you can score it at 4¼ inches. I'm gonna put some snail adhesive on the back of my emboss piece. You wanna use a little more adhesive when you emboss your cardstock with a folder because it tends to pull, and that was the end of my tape. So I guess that's all we'll use. but it tends to pull up when your cardstock is embossed, and you want to make sure that your card stays together. Then on the back of my cake piece, I'm going to put some Stampin' Dimensionals to make it pop out. And then I'll just position that on my card front. And there you have a simple cake card that you can use for a birthday, a wedding, a bridal shower, or many other occasions. If you'd like to add a little more color or interest to this card, if you think it's too plain that way, I want to show you a couple other things that I tried. First, on this one, I colored in just the larger flowers with the Seaside Spray Stampin' Blends. So there's two. This is the dark one. There's also a light one. So I started by coloring in the whole flower with the light one, and then I just highlighted a few places with the darker one to color in the flowers. For this one, I colored in the flowers, and then I colored in the cake with the Wink of Stella pen, so it gives the cake itself just a little bit of shimmer. And for this one, I colored in the flowers, the larger flowers, with just the Wink of Stella pen. I hope that after watching this video, you realize that heat embossing is easier than it looks, and it's a great way to add some elegance to your cards. Happy stamping!